So today we're doing a case analysis of TACC605 Limited. So TI is preparing its financial statements and needs to ensure compliance with AASB. Here's the background of TI. TI develops innovative software solutions and has following intangibles, including patents, trademarks, and internally generated softwares. And the company is operating in a very competitive market. So for the internal generated software to be recognized in the financial statements, AASB 138 requires two phases to be considered. So the first one is a research phase. However, no intangible assets arising from research shall be recognized as entity cannot demonstrate it can yet generate probable future economic benefits. In the development phase, an entity can, in some instance, identify it, but subject to 6 conditions. So here is the list of conditions. We had 2 general requirements for recognition highlighted in yellow, with 4 additional requirements. The reason for that is due to the difficulties in assessing whether an internally generated intangible asset qualifies for recognition. So in our case, TACC605 Limited is developing softwares intended for both internal use and external licensing, clearly demonstrating its intentions to complete the project for commercial and operational purposes. The project is expected to deliver future economic benefits through increased revenues, licensing opportunities, and operational efficiencies. With access to skilled personnel and sufficient technical and financial resources, TI is well equipped to complete the project. And lastly, with a modern accounting system, TI should have the ability to record all attributable costs. Lastly, AASB requires internally generated assets to be recorded as the total of all directly attributable costs. And now I will pass to Yixuan for possible amortization methods.
Thank you, Zhou. Hello, everyone. I'm Yixuan Xia. Now, I will discuss the amortization method under AASB 138 for TACC605's internally developed software. According to AASB 138, paragraph 98, the amortization method should reflect the part in which the assets' future economic benefits are expected to be consumed. Common method recommended include the straight line method, the diminishing balance method, and the units of production method. However, ASB 138 paragraph 97 states that if the part of benefits cannot be determined reliably, the straight line method must be applied. Let's now consider the 3 methods and their advantages and disadvantages. First, the straight line method spreads the cost evenly over the asset's useful life. It is simple, consistent, and easy to apply. However, it may not accurately reflect assets that lose value faster in earlier periods. Second, the diminishing balance method applies a fixed percentage to the carrying amount each year. It matches assets with rapid earlier value growth, but creates more volatile financial result and is more complex to apply. Third, the unit of production method bases amortization on actual usage, such as operating hours or output. It reflects the economic consumption very accurately, but it requires detailed usage data, which is often unavailable for internally developed software. When comparing the 3 methods, the straight line method is simple, fits internal software well, and it's highly recommended. The diminishing balance method is more complex and only partly suitable. The units of production method is very complex and not suitable for internally developed software. Given TACC605 software, provides stable benefits and usage pattern cannot be reliably measured. The Strigan method is the most appropriate and recommended choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Yixuan Xia. I will now discuss the potential indicators of impairment for TACC605 patents and trademarks. According to ASB 136, both external and internal factors can impact asset impairment. The first external indicator is increased competition in the technology market. As the technology market is highly competitive and continues to grow, demand for existing patents and trademarks may decrease. As you can see, the technology software industry has grown significantly at a CAGR of 6.8% over the past 5 years. If a competitor develops more attractive technology or a stronger brand, it could reduce demand for tech-innovative software, leading to lower revenue from patents and trademarks, and a potential impairment. The second external indicator is the rapid technological advancements. In recent years, as new software products related to big data and AI are frequently released, tech-innovative technology may become outdated, reducing demand for its software and potentially making its patents and trademarks obsolete. This could reduce their useful life and decrease their recoverable amount. The third external indicator is the legal challenges. In Australia, software patents face strict legal requirements. It often excluding innovative software concepts due to the focus on tangible inventions. If tech-innovative software patents don't meet these criteria, they could be invalidated, reducing their value and leading to potential impairment. Internally, if tech-innovative software doesn't meet sales targets or return on investment due to competition or outdated technology, it may reduce the recoverable amount of its patents and trademarks. Next, I will discuss the steps involved in the impairment test. First, according to ASB 136, an impairment test should be performed when there are impairment indicators, regardless of its useful life. For TACC605, this includes both internal and external indicators for its patents, trademarks. And internally generated software is also subject to impairment due to technological advancements, competition, and poor performance. In addition, for certain trademarks with indefinite useful life, it must be tested annually for impairment regardless of whether there is any indication. Then we determine the impairment testing method. If patents, trademarks, and internally generated software are embedded in products, they must be allocated to the smallest CGU that relies on them, as they cannot generate cash flows independently. If they can generate revenue independently, they can be tested individually. However, they are generally allocated to a CGU for impairment test. Next, we should determine the total impairment loss. According to ASB 136, under the cost model, we must first calculate the recoverable amount of a CGU individual assets, which is the higher of fair value less cost of disposal and value in use. Then we should compare it with its total carrying amount, and we can determine the impairment loss, which is the lower of carrying amount and recoverable amount. For example, for testing them as a CGU, the impairment loss should be the lower of its recoverable amount and carrying amount, which is 1,500,000. Under the revaluation model, if the fair value is lower than the recoverable amount, an impairment loss is recognized. However, most intangible assets don't have an active market, so we usually choose the cost model. After that, according to ASB 136, for impairment of CGU, the impairment loss should be first allocated to goodwill if any exists. Finally, after reducing goodwill, the remaining loss is allocated to patents, trademarks, and software on a pro rata basis, as you can see on the following table. Finally, we cannot reduce the carrying amount of patents, trademarks, or software below the highest of these three. Thank you.
In this part, I will explore how tech-innovative companies should disclose its intangible assets under ASB 138. Intangible assets make up a significant portion of companies' total value. ASB 138 sets out key disclosure rules for intangible assets. Companies must state whether assets have a finite or indefinite life and disclose the amortization method used. They must also report each asset's cost, accumulated amortization, and net book value. If impairment occurs, it should be disclosed with the method used to calculate recoverable amount. Lastly, any changes in the asset value during the period must be reconciled, and the amortization shown in the company in the income statement. So now let's see how these rules apply to TACC605 assets. Patents have a finite life around 5 years and use straight line amortization with annual impairment tests. Trademarks may be finite or indefinite. Indefinite ones aren't amortized but require yearly impairment testing. Internally generated software has a finite life and must meet AASB 138 criteria to be capitalized. Once recognized, it's usually amortized over 4 years. Clear classification and disclosure for each asset type is essential. So this table illustrates how TACC605 can present its intangible asset disclosures in the financial statements. We showed original cost, accumulated amortization, and the net book value for each category. For example, patents cost 1.2 million with 200,000 amortized to date, leaving a book value of 1 million. We also specified the amortization method and any special notes, such as impairment testing or the internally generated nature of the software. To conclude, here are the key takeaways for the TACC605 disclosure practices. First, each intangible asset should be classified clearly. Second, the company must justify both the useful life and the amortization method used. Third, it should transparently report all the amortization and the impairment data. And finally, for the internally generated software, it's crucial to explain how the asset met AASB 138 capitalization criteria. So the proper disclosure ensures TACC605 maintains compliance and delivers high-quality financial reporting. So for the next part, I will pass to Sam.
Thank you, Tianyi. In today's fast-moving tech industry, how long does innovation really last? For TACC605, this question directly affects how they account for their intangible assets. Recent technology advancements shorten useful life. For patents, this means reduced relevance. For software, this means they will be superseded swiftly by newer versions. For trademarks, they will be less affected unless brand value declines. As such, the accelerated consumption of economic benefits requires re-evaluation to confirm asset values remain realistic and compliant. How should TI then adapt to these changes? Under AASB 138, there are 3 key points to consider. Companies must reassess the useful life of intangible assets at least annually. If the reassessment identifies a change in expected usage, the amortization period must be revised prospectively. In accordance with accounting standards, amortization methods must be reviewed and adjusted should there be a change in the consumption pattern or future benefits. Applying this to TI's case, for patents, if replaced by newer technology, its useful life should be reduced. For software, it may require accelerated amortization. For trademarks, companies must determine whether the level of customer recognition or perceived relevance has diminished. Identifying the impact of technological change is just the first step. Knowing how to properly account for it is where compliance becomes critical. Under AASB 108, it states to treat changes as a change in accounting estimate. Under AASB 138, it also states that the disclosure is required in financial statement to clearly communicate the changes and its impacts. Now that we understand this requirement, let's look at a practical example of how TI would adjust its amortization when faced with a shorter useful life. In this instance, if TI initially amortized the software over 10 years, but due to technological advancements, the total useful life is now revised to 6 years. The amortization must be adjusted prospectively. The revised remaining useful life is now 4 years. The remaining amortization per year is now 375,000 from 2025 onwards. To stay ahead, TI must adopt ongoing measures to make sure its financial reporting keeps pace. These recommendations will help to achieve that. First, to monitor industry trends continuously to assess useful life validity. Second, to conduct a useful life annual review or upon critical technological progress. Third, to perform impairment testing on intangible assets with diminished future benefits. Fourth, revisions must align with amortization schedules and impairment assessments. Lastly, to record management assumptions and disclose revisions clearly in financial statements to uphold transparency. TI needs to ensure that their financial reporting keeps pace with change. A regular review of intangible assets promotes credibility, compliance, and clarity in the fast-moving market. Thank you, and these are our references.